Hey there, welcome to Her Truth Revealed, unraveling our midlife era. I'm your host, Wonderful Morrison. This space is for the woman who's done pretending, done hiding, and ready to step fully into her truth. Midlife isn't about fading into the background. It's a time where resilience lights the way and authenticity becomes the loudest voice in the room. In this season of our lives, we are more than just survivors. We are creators, revolutionaries, and unapologetic women rewriting the rules. I've been through my battles, rebuilding from loss, betrayal, and heartache. But here's the truth. Every challenge, every tear, and every setback has led me to this moment of profound transformation. Together, we're going to dive into raw, real conversations that shatter stereotypes, tackle the tough stuff, and embrace the powerful magic that is midlife. So, if you're ready to live this chapter with boldness and joy, hit subscribe. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it and leave a review so we can keep this revolution going. Ladies, no more masks, no more apologies, just the truth of who we are. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of Her Truth Revealed podcast. I'm your host, Wonderful Morrison. And we here at Her Truth Revealed is all about unraveling our midlife era. Now, what does that really look like out into the world? It is having conversations that are defined under the generic law of taboo. And today we're going to have an incredible conversation with an incredible human being about sex. And this is where, that George Michael song would enter in. What about sex? And I really want to talk about this because, first of all, in my group, I have a small group community in Facebook. And every time I ask a question, what is it that we should talk about that we don't talk enough about in midlife? Number one answer is always sex. And I have yet to find a conversation that is as interesting, juicy, I know that's a word there, and also extremely needed with a person who specializes in the space of sex, because I think it's a multidimensional word, because it's not just an act, it's also our emotions, it's our physical bodies as we're going through perimenopause and menopause. And there's some things that we have talked about that I thought, this is a real thing. This is a real thing. So I would just love to say thank you to all our listeners for being such great, amazing humans that follow us, that share us, that comment, that also give us amazing reviews. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it didn't start out this way. It started out as I wanted to hear myself talk. And then it turned into ratings and being heard all over the world. And I am incredibly grateful. So without further ado, I would like to welcome, I don't want to butcher her name, so I'm just going to have her help me say your name with me.
It's Xanet Pailet.
Xanet. I see it in my mind and I wanted to say Xanet.
That's close.
But
That's
Xanet
close.
is so much more beautiful. So we're going to have a conversation about sex. Let's do this, Xanet. Let's talk about sex. But
Let's do it.
before we do that, tell us how you got into talking about sex.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have met you, and I'm excited about this conversation. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, if you had asked me when I was like 15 or 18 years old, could you see yourself as a sex and intimacy coach? I would have looked at you like you were out of your mind, because sex was not a happy thing for me, even in my teenage years. And I had a lot of issues around sex. I had shame around sex that happened as a result of some things that happened in childhood, and, you know, a lot of disconnection with my body and I was going to say menopause, but puberty was really hard. Like there's
Oh,
all of these ways in which my body got shamed, by men when I was walking to school and my mother didn't give me the right bra. And,
mm,
it was like scary stuff when you're 13 years old. And it just seemed like to continue for most of my life. And this really carried over to my marriage. I was married for 26 years. I have two adult children, five grandchildren. I love grandchildren. And sex was continued to be a problem. It was painful. I actually had a condition called vaginismus, which is the tightening of the vaginal muscles, making penetration very, very,
mm,
very painful. It didn't help that I wasn't turned on. Didn't help that I never had pleasure or an orgasm. It didn't help that there was lots of drama. There were lots of issues that I had around infections and UTIs, and then some medical people, I think, with the best intentions caused me even more trauma, right? So it was just like one thing after another, right?
yeah,
And so, like, if you were in my shoes and sex kind of sucked and your body was telling you no, like, you do what I did. I closed shop after I was 30 years old. And I was just like, hey, we're done. It wasn't like I said that, to my husband, but
right.
that's what happened. That's essentially what happened. And I just stayed in that space for, I don't know, another 20 years. And
Wow.
yeah. And, not surprisingly, when a sexual relationship between a couple starts to deteriorate, so does the rest of their relationship, right? And that's
Yes.
especially when you can't talk about it and you have no words for it, and there's too many tears and drama and trauma around it. And that's what happened. And over time, our relationship deteriorated. We ended up sleeping in separate beds intentionally. For 10 years or so, and ultimately at the age of 50, I pretty much had enough. And so had he. And we decided amicably to divorce. And our kids at that point were in college. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, okay, well, I'm 50 years old. That's pretty young. And,
Hmm.
I want to be married again. I want to be in another relationship, but I have this problem, which is I feel totally broken around my sexuality. And I don't know how to deal with that. What am I going to tell a prospective Tinder date? And it was a horrible feeling. It was really scary. And I think that was the defining moment when I was like, I don't know how I'm going to change this, but I've got to do some work around this. I've got to really look at what happened to me and what's going on. And that was a defining moment.
Wow. When you're telling your story, like probably the rest of my audience is thinking about that is sort of the glue of a relationship, right? Or the things that make relationships progress, I guess, into the emotional intimacy realm is sex, because it's very vulnerable, it's very personal, it's very private. But I was thinking, what about for some of us who don't have, like you had a vaginal situation that made it painful, right?
Hmm.
So naturally, but it was interesting how you said it also, your emotions, they weren't turned on. So do you think that there is a combination of, if what if you had been turned on, but you had that problem?
Mm.
Would you have sought the would you have sought a solution sooner than waiting another 10 years or 20
20
years
years.
or
No, because they are integrally related, right? Like the fact,
ah,
vaginismus for most women, it's a psychological thing that's happening. It's physiological,
fascinating.
but it happens because of tension. It's contraction. It's like the same thing like when your goes out when you have too much stress in your life, right? And in some way,
Yes.
for me, my poor little vagina was saying, don't do this, don't do this. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. It's just trying to protect me. Right.
Mm,
So it was a very, it was really a reflection of all of the anxiety that I felt around sex and how broken I felt. And for most women, that is the precipitating factor when there's vaginismus in, as a diagnosis, if you will. And mine wasn't even officially
Interesting.
diagnosed as vaginismus, but I know that's what it was, having worked with
We
women.
know our bodies
We
better
know
than
our
the
body.
doctors do. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So when I work with somebody and that shows up as a factor, as a symptom, I get
Mhm.
very curious about, okay, what else? Tell me more about what happened in your childhood. Tell me about your relationship with your body. What happened, like really trying to understand, were there signals? Was there trauma? Was there a way in which the body was just trying to protect us, right? From something that somatically in our body was bad, was
Right.
painful.
I mean, for one, how intelligent our bodies are to
Absolutely.
naturally, but also what's unique and interesting about your story is a marriage has a tendency, right, to be its safe zone. Like that's what it's intended. Not every marriage feels safe, but it sounds like there are some spaces. I mean, you were together because the other thing is the length of time, right? So length of time. So there must have been some level of comfort there or familiarity that
Sure.
kept you, and then that was still going. So, what I want the audience to understand is why I'm asking this question is because you can feel one thing, but think another. Like you could
Mhm.
think like everything is good. It's perfect. I've got a house. I've got a job. I've got kids, but it might not feel on an emotional space. And when people come to you, so when we're talking about sex and our bodies, it's a massive disconnection, first of all,
Yes.
sounds
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
So when they come in and they say, but no, everything is great. We're just having this one problem.
Yes. That's what they say all the
How do
time.
you hear that? Like from your perspective, what do you really hear when people say that to you?
So what I know to be true is 99% of the time when a couple is having intimacy issues, challenges around sex and intimacy, it's a symptom of
Mm,
larger relationship issues. Almost always. It is the
mm,
rare time when they're really just challenged around sex. Most of the time, it's a symptom of larger relationship issues that's having an impact, is showing up not only in the bedroom, because when I probe, I'm like, well, what else is going on? Like outside of sex, how's your relationship? Do you ever fight? Like, and then you start actually hearing all of the complicated layers that happen
mm.
when two people come together with all of their,
Yeah. Okay, so I want to bring up something that I feel like it needs to be addressed because Hollywood always makes sex scenes so sensual, very intense, right? And one of the things I just want to put out there, most of those highly intense, super sweaty, they're usually with a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds. So
yeah,
let's
that's
put
true.
that on the table. And it's just getting a little bit more play nowadays where there's an older character that we are familiar with that is having sex on screen or like an idea that that's what's happening, right? But tell us a little bit about so marriages and sex. And then there's this thing called perimenopause, which I've been told by multiple different sources that are in the medical field kind of starts in our late 30s.
Mm,
So it starts in our late 30s. It really starts to blossom in our 40s. And
mhm,
then it hits home in our 50s,
mm,
right?
mm.
So there's already this hormonal transformational thing inside us happening. We're
Right.
in a what we would consider a loveless marriage, which I don't even know. I think we need to talk about that too, because I think
Mhm.
love and sex may not be the same thing.
Right.
So let's just say a sexless relationship.
Mm,
And then you've got this other added element called a powerful woman, right?
mm,
So when
mhm.
we start, before we hit record, we're talking about like, ooh, money,
Mhm.
power, sex, all comes into play. So you've got these things going, but on the outside, it's like people want to talk about let's fall in love again. And if we just went to that seminar for the weekend
Mm,
from your world and the things
mhm,
that you know personally and what you see, what
mhm.
do you think truly can't imagine it being a one issue problem. What would you say are the majority top three issues when we're facing those types of dynamics?
I think it's complicated. Every situation is unique and complicated, but very often, I mean, usually first and foremost, what you see is there's not enough emotional safety in the relationship. So the emotional connection suffers. And for women, for the vast majority of women, like we need to feel emotionally safe and emotionally connected to our partner in order to even want to open up sexually. Right. And that is a big issue that a lot of couples face because they've been together in long-term relationships or even short-term relationships for that matter. You know, life happens, conflicts happen, resentments build up, little scratches start to fester into bigger wounds, right? And they never get repaired, generally speaking, because nobody teaches us, not only nobody teaches us how to have sex, nobody teaches us how to have relationships, relationship
Yes.
skills, communication skills, let alone how to repair a conflict, right? And then that just starts to build up all of this resentment and they get into some sort of pattern. And we all have our patterns that we get into. And, you know, of course, because we're human beings, they stem from whatever our emotional wounds that we had as a child, right? And so we get caught up in that with our partner and we don't feel comfortable being vulnerable with them because we're afraid that if we try to be vulnerable, they're going to criticize us, right? And that's going to trigger some emotional childhood wound of your mother criticizing you because you were not good enough, right? And you
Oh,
can
and then it
see
cycles
it
into a thing,
cycles
and then
into
Hollywood
it.
never shows us that part.
Yeah,
Just
no,
like, oh, two people in a steamy, intense.
yeah, never, never.
So fascinating. So what
Yeah.
did you do you get couples or maybe the husband or the wife come in and say, I want what I see online. Like I want that. And
Yeah.
how do we get that? And and they
Yeah.
assume it's just a physical
Yeah.
thing.
Yes. Yes. Everybody comes in and says, like, we just need to try some different positions or we need to try some toys. And I'm very kind. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But let's start over here. Like, let you
Mm,
feel like you can have some empathy for each other, that you can start to feel more closer to each other, that you can feel more emotionally connected with each other. And that will start to shift the dynamic. And it does shift the dynamic because all of a sudden I feel safer with my partner asking them for what I want during sex, communicating about what my needs are, right? And vice versa. And then there's, you asked me about like, here we are in midlife, right? And so, our arousal patterns shift as our hormones fluctuate and change. So when we were very young, the estrogen was high and,
and
this
going
like,
nuts.
and going nuts and our hormones were going nuts and we were horny and we wanted to have sex all the time. And we got aroused, I mean, I never did, but some people did. Not me. We got aroused like with nothing, right? And we could have sex without lubrication. We could have sex 5 times a day and it was amazing. That's not what happens as your body changes and your hormones fluctuate, right? So as we get older, we have to think more about that's called spontaneous desire. I see you, I
Mm,
get horny, I get aroused, I'm ready to have sex. But that doesn't happen, right? As we get older and our estrogen levels drop, or we go through our cycle as our estrogen levels go
yes.
up and down. And yes, in our late 30s, they start, going down. We need to focus more on what we call responsive desire. And responsive desire is happens when your partner or you start touching yourself. Like it's not, having sex isn't in your mind. You're like, it's the last thing
Right.
on my to-do list for a lot of women, right? Especially super powerful, busy women who really, this is like low on the list. But when you start getting touched or kissed, right, your body starts responding. And the more you get touched or kissed and your body starts responding, your arousal pathway, your arousal pattern starts to change. And you're like, oh, that's feeling really good. I think I might want to have sex. So that's something that we really need to be aware of. Like, it's not, you're not broken if you're not horny as you age. Not true at all.
I love that you just said that.
Yeah. You just have to understand, and your partner needs to understand as well, that your desire is changing, that it's a more responsive desire, that you probably need to go slower and they need to spend more time in on foreplay. The body really needs to take more time to get aroused. But it's not like we're broken and I'm done with sex.
Right. So that's interesting you say that because when that does how we've seen it out there, because let's be honest, nobody's just having open conversations about this on a regular
Right.
basis. But what we see out there again, I'm just going to use Hollywood and television as our resource center
It
for
is.
this situation is then there's these things that kind of come in, which is associated so much to midlife, is the cheating thing. So you never see couples talking about it, right? It's
Mhm.
usually something like the dinner table or something that is very minuscule to the bigger issues that's
Mhm.
not being spoken about. But
Mhm.
then somebody in and you can see it as a viewer. I watch these shows sometimes and think, God, they still love each other though. They want to be together and you're
Mhm.
rooting for them to get back together. But then a cheating thing happens
Mhm.
or they get divorced and they get married to somebody else, even though they're still wanting to be together. What do you say to couples who have come in and there has been a cheating situation environment? Because
Mhm.
that's sort of a moral compass type thing for a ton of people. Is it always really that morally rigid?
Yeah, so I think that depends on a lot of different factors. I definitely have couples. I have a couple coming in soon where that's an issue or has been an issue. So I think it depends on a lot of factors. Again, like underlying what's going on. Is it that they're not having sex? And one of the partners feels like, well, I mean, I've got some options here. Like I can either do this, and disclose what I'm doing, or I can go behind their back and do it.
Mhm.
Right? Or I can leave the relationship, but I don't want to leave the relationship because I still love her or him
Mm.
and we have kids and we don't want to, cause the whole family to go into disarray. So there's a lot of reasons. Esther Perel has, oh, what's the name of the book? Esther Perel has an amazing book and a TED talk that she did on affairs. And I can't off the top of my, I'll give it to you. Um, State of Affairs, maybe, where she talks about when people have affairs, it's rarely about their partner. It's about something that's happening inside of them, some need of theirs that is not being met
Mm.
by themselves, by a partner, right? So, uh, very often, I guess I would say from what my experience is kind of 50-50. 50% of the time of the couples that I've seen, an affair can end up causing the end of the relationship. I definitely have had
Mhm.
examples where that's happened. They at that point, they're generally not coming to see me because
Right.
the other 50% are like, this is a big red flag, right? We are here at a crossroads. It's often when people come to see me, we are here at a crossroads. And this is either going to bring us closer or it's going to split us apart. And we're not
Yeah.
sure, but we're in this relationship deep enough. There's enough love here, for us to really try to understand what's happened and why it happened and whether we can come back together. And so I think it can go either way, depending upon the circumstances, how long they've been together, how long the cheating has been gone on. Was it like I was out at a convention and, I met a woman in a bar or a man in a bar versus like I've had some of these, I've been with this person for 6 years and my wife doesn't know about it kind of situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Which
Very,
I think
very
is
different.
yeah, that is and you're right. I think we can't blanket statement a lot of these conversations when it comes to intimacy and sex. We're but generally we all just want to have an answer. right? We
Yeah,
just
of
want to know
course.
like what is happening here and why is it. And there's a lot of like the moral issues that people are struggling with whatever their
Religious issues
things
will
like
have a
that.
huge piece on it. Also, like childhood wounds. So if
Mhm.
your mother, generally mother, if your mother was cheated on a lot and you saw that growing up, right?
Mm.
You're going to be a lot more sensitive to your partner cheating on you, right? So because
Yeah.
it's really
That's so
triggering all of
true.
that childhood trauma that, you saw growing up. And how that made the family so unstable and created an unstable situation childhood for you. So it's such a complicated, which I think is part of why this work for me is so fascinating because there's so many layers. And just being an intellectual person, like I love helping to unpack the layers and helping
Yeah.
people see what's actually happening underneath it. But, this is, 50% of I think the last thing I heard was like 50% of marriages somebody cheats at some point in the relationship.
I mean, one of the most popular shows I remember, like, in the late '90s, early 2000s was the cheater cam, right? When
Ah,
the guy
remember
went
that.
out and hunted down the cheaters, and then it would be all live and caught
Mm.
'em red-handed. Things like that have always
Talk about
been.
public shaming. God.
Yeah, which I think is a whole whole 'nother way that we use sex as a tool and a weapon to
Yes.
hurt each other, when
Yes.
actually I don't know if that's really beneficial for anyone to, because then you get into a relationship. I remember watching that in my is going, "I would totally hire it." What benefit would that have done though? Whether or
Right.
not I knew or didn't know, or if it happened was happening, it was a reality of the world I lived in. I'm just saying it didn't happen to me, but I would
Mhm.
have to accept that it's happening and then look at what I'm doing to make that, or to be a part of it, or to ignore it. But, and a lot of women I've talked to is like, they know in their gut, right? They know in their gut
I know
this was,
something's wrong. They feel something's off. Like
yeah.
they see their partner like texting. It's often this way, like texting with somebody, or yes, they know energetically that something is going on, but there's not enough emotional safety in the relationship to be able to say, what's going on?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because you've brought it up a few times with severe cases of all these things and then maybe some light ones. It sounds like what you're saying is the first step into healing our sexual relationships with our partners is to talk about it, which
Mhm.
is, sounds like the answer, but let's be completely honest, hardest freaking thing to do.
So hard.
So what is your suggestion that, like, when you go for you, for instance, how did it start with you? How did you know for you, like, I can't do 10 more days of this thing that you've been in for 20 plus years? Like, what was the dam that broke for you that you either had to talk about it, like,
Yeah, no, I mean, we we never we tried to talk about sex, back in the day. But it was so painful for me, both emotionally and physically. And it was so frustrating for me. Like, it's not like he didn't try to please me. He did. I just was not responsive. I was so in my head. I had so much anxiety about it. And then it just always ended up in tears. Right. And it was just like, I don't need this drama in my life. It's just not necessary. I mean, I wasn't getting anything out of it. What did my husband do for 20 years? He swore to me when we divorced. He swore to me that he never ever cheated on me. I actually almost had a little bit of an affair 7 years into that marriage, an emotional affair for sure. But he swore to me that he never did, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So I mean, for me, the breaking point was just like, we've done this for 25 years. We were at an anniversary dinner in New York City, sitting across from each other. And we didn't had very little connection at that point. We talked about the kids, but the kids were grown, or in
mhm.
college. And, he would like lament to me about his job, which he hated. He was a lawyer. But there was no emotional connection ever. So, I mean, that was a huge piece for me in the relationship that was missing. He had no emotional attunement to me. I was very attuned to his emotional needs. And
Mhm.
he was kind of a needy guy, but I didn't feel emotionally attuned to. So I felt very empty, to be honest.
Mm.
The only emotional connection I got before my kids went to college were from my kids. So it was a very lonely, it was a very, very, very lonely time. And like I say to women all the time, like, the loneliest place to be can be in a marriage.
Yes, and I bet you there's so many people listening to going, "I completely get it." I
Right?
feel like that was my mother's experience, so at a really young age for me, I
Hmm.
remember very, very young, I had a lot of friends who would put their names and then the boy they liked, they would put their last names. Or I have one of my very close friends, she had an entire 3-ring binder, years worth of wedding dresses,
Wow.
all the wedding things, and
Yeah.
I just was never that kid
Hmm.
because I saw my parents, and it just felt loveless. I mean, they played the part well.
Yep.
Let's not get that pat and they fought all the time too, but that part wasn't the thing, it was just I couldn't feel the connection, I didn't feel the love, and I remember thinking I was 15 years old, and I said, "Yeah, I will never marry unless it's out of love," and even that, it's gotta be like so I was on the extreme side because I look back now and I go, "God, that was pretty extreme at such a young age," because I
Hmm.
could
Hmm.
have and what was interesting is I got married early. So
Hmm.
then I met the man of my dreams and I got married. We met when we were 19, and I'll never forget thinking we were at a college house party and he was so nice. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I give this thing a try. Wasn't taking it seriously enough to think. And I look back now, we just celebrated our 29 years, but there was this real pivotal time in our marriage where,
Mm.
yeah, no, this isn't gonna work out. I don't think this is gonna be a thing.
How did you
The
shift it?
well, see, that's the thing, the talking part. The
Mhm.
talking part, because I still loved him and he loved me, but I felt so empty, like you're saying. I felt so lonely in a marriage. And I knew that someday my kids were going to leave me. So I'm like, great, they're going to leave me and that's going to be this. But we still loved each other. And I had been asking him to go to marriage therapy. And then he was like, no, well, why? What's wrong? And when we went, this was what hit me. When we went and the therapist said, "So you married your mother."
Yeah, of course, we always do.
It blew my mind because my issues weren't with my mother, so I thought. My issues growing up was with my father,
Mm.
right? Very volatile human.
Mhm.
I mean, if I could diagnose him, he was probably bipolar.
Mhm.
Not that that's a big deal, but because it wasn't addressed, it was an
Mhm.
issue in our household.
Mhm.
But I reflected him, like my personality was even though I thought, no way, I'm nothing like my dad. And then when she said I married my mother, I've lost it. I was like, "Oh my gosh," because
Mhm.
my mother was the loveless woman in the relation. She
Mhm.
was not affectionate towards my father. My father was overly, he was a love bomber. So that's when I remember thinking like, we're either gonna make this work, which I wanted to because I loved him. And it wasn't the sex wasn't the hard part, it was the emotional connection for me.
Mhm.
But for
Mhm.
him, because that's what I was used as a weapon. Hello, ladies. Do you know what I'm talking about? That was my weapon.
Withholding sex.
Yes,
Mhm.
that was my weapon of
Yeah,
choice
it's a
is
bad decision to make, but a lot of the people make that decision. Conscious, right? Not
yes.
always like,
No,
I'm gonna
no, because I
withhold
was so
sex.
hurt.
Right. I'm withholding sex because I'm hurt and I don't feel emotionally connected with you. But what it
Yes.
feels like to your partner is that you are using that as a weapon to
Yes.
manipulate them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then we went through our own things, our own therapies and all of that, and we worked through it by the
Mhm.
skin of we were hanging on a very thin rope
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
I get
then
it.
we came back together and it's been so fruitful. And what's interesting is I went to dinner with a bunch of women my age group, in our 50s, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, sex is great." And the woman next to me who I thought was probably living it up like a sexual being, she says to me, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I have to take a Valium to make it happen." And I was like, "Wait, hold on. Doesn't that thing make you fall asleep? Like, how is that the thing that gets you?" And that's when it started. I started talking to midlife women, that's when this
Mm-hmm.
whole thing started. And then I had another lady who was like, she says to me, a really good friend, she's like, yeah, she finds out she's allergic to a lot of lubrications. So
Mm-hmm.
for her, it's the pain, the physical pain, right? She's
Yeah.
allergic to a bunch of lubrication. So now we're having this conversation at the dinner table that I
Good.
didn't think was a thing, but you got a Valium taker, a lubricant searching human over here, and then another woman who is afraid that her very high libido might be less if she gets like an operation to get her hysterectomy, right? Because that's sort of like the part that is a thing that
Forces you into menopause.
yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking, my gosh, I got to figure this out. But you know what? My first solution was we should get toys. So it's interesting you say that because that's what, but now I realize it is the conversation. It's so how do what's your suggestion for some of us who we've never talked about it? We're freaking out just thinking about talking about it,
Yeah.
right? How do you start it? How do you tell them what
Times I tell couples to write a letter to each other. Sometimes it's easier to put it in writing and just to start to ask them questions, right? To start to say, like, hey, to talk, like, each write a letter to each other about how we're feeling about our sex life, what we're liking, what we're not liking, what we might want to
Mm,
try, right? So that everybody has time to process it. And it's less, for couples that are can't have that conversation, it feels less conflicting or controversial to like have confrontational. That was the word. See, midlife confrontation. You all understand what I'm saying. To have that conversation in person right away, because that's really challenging, right? And then,
yes.
you know, some suggestions like, I heard about this amazing woman, Xanet, and she's got this great blog post around sex and intimacy. Maybe we could like start looking at it, right? And starting together to maybe read a book or, watch some YouTube videos or read some blog posts. Chances are, not always, but chances are that at least one of the party is actually already looking. They're already like searching
Mhm.
out for information, maybe, reading a book, etc. So just start to like normalize that we need to start talking about this. It's important for both of us, but doing it, very slowly and gently. And, if that doesn't work, go find somebody like me that we're around. There are sex coaches around who can help couples start to have that conversation. Because it does feel for many couples like they're opening up a Pandora's box that once they open it up, you're not going to be able to ever close that box up again, right? And that's the
Yes.
truth. Once you start opening up this subject, everything comes out. But that's really important because, you have two ways to live in a relationship. You can live in a relationship, where your sex life is like a 3 or a 4. By the time you get to menopause, you're just going to say, you're going to call it quits because you've now got all the ammunition. I'm in menopause. I'm
Mm,
not having enough lubrication. My libido is dropped. Da, 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 da. That's all the ammunition you need to just say, I'm
right.
calling it quits, right? Versus like you can live in a relationship where your sex is like somewhere between an 7 and a 10 most of the time,
Mhm.
right? And you're actually like having a lot of pleasure and enjoy having a lot of sensation and feeling really emotionally connected. And there's plenty of couples that stay in that 3 or 4
Yeah.
and for the rest of their marriage, right? Because maybe for them, sex isn't that important, or maybe sex is important to one of them and there's cheating going.
I didn't
Like,
even think about that, right?
yeah,
Like there's something
yeah,
else at play and
yeah,
or they have the concept of like an open marriage
Or an open
or
marriage.
swingers, and you've got all kinds of different scenarios.
Yeah.
Like there's a site, I was just actually looking at this documentary. There's a site called Ashley Madison who's
Oh, yeah.
under scrutiny right now because it's a bunch of married people hooking up, but that wasn't the intention of this site initially. It was just supposed to be like a taboo, secret, highfalutin space for people to hang out and be together, but not the married part. That wasn't supposed to be a part of the thing, but that's been the case.
Yeah.
And that big thing that just came out with a CEO guy
I was thinking about
caught,
the
oh my
Coldplay thing, right?
gosh, line. It is such a big deal, which is so interesting because here we are well into the 21st century,
Right.
2025. Technology is ridiculous. There's been so many conversations and so many women who's spearheaded a bunch of sex conversations, right? And still, it's a big issue when we see something like that. So when you saw something like that, did you immediately, as a sex coach working with so many couples that struggle with this, cheating really truly about sex? Is that something that could, how do I put, like, where does the moral compass and a physical need kind of clash or intersect, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. So for me, I don't hold any judgment around any of it, right? I think like those Coldplay people, they kind of look to me like they were in love. I don't know about you,
Right.
They look-
Would have never guessed
right?
that
They
that
looked
was a
like they
thing.
were in love. And probably if they had done nothing, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. It was their shame reaction, right?
Yes, that's
Got
what it
the
was.
that's what it was. If they had just stayed there, they would have panned to somebody else and it probably would have just,
Yeah.
somebody might have picked it up. But chances are they wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But it was the way she turned around and he ducked down. I'm like, oh my God, like talk about the public shaming that you're having right now. But I'm a very like, I really don't hold any judgment. Like I feel like you need to do what you need to do for your relationship and for you. I don't know how to answer that question. I think that,
I think you did answer it though,
okay.
because I think that's what it is. I think that what what makes it sort of a moral weapon for the rest of the world to use is how they responded
Right.
to their relationship. Because
Right.
we don't know. I mean, initially it could be like, oh, he's in an open marriage. So what? Right. Or they haven't slept in the same bed for the same 10 years. When you shared that, I bet that nobody that you knew that. Right. It
Right.
wasn't like
Right.
just an open, information that's on your front door that says, hey, you're going to walk into a house where a couple doesn't sleep in the same bed. I
Right.
mean, Leave It to Beaver, the show, was literally one of the most popular shows, and their husband and wife slept in separate beds and they were
But in the
madly
same
in
room.
love.
That's true. That's true.
So we can't even put that. I think that's what makes I think that moral boundary is how people respond. And it goes back to what you said. We have to look at our own pain, our own trauma. Why do we choose to do things like that? Like
Mhm.
there's something about her and him that is unhealed that allowed them to do that to their families or
Mhm.
wanted to, kind of
Right.
thing.
Absolutely.
Everybody's talking about, oh, what about their kids and what about this? And the thing is, it's out in the open now. So
Right.
naturally, it's going to be an issue.
Right. Right.
And
Absolutely.
everybody in the world is going to have their own judgments. And
Absolutely.
everybody wants to talk about it
Right.
because they don't want to look at their own crappy relationship. So they're
Exactly.
going to judge one that's made it online.
Right.
And, but I feel like in
I
this
actually have,
talk,
I honestly have sympathy for both of those people. Like that was my initial, like, oh my God, that poor couple, like I get it. I get it
yeah,
that they were both married and there was the whole, working with each other stuff, which frankly, that's also challenging because where do you meet people these days, right? You either meet people online or you meet them in your business. And now all of these businesses have all these rules that you can't date somebody in your company, right? And to me, that's kind of screwed up. Just saying.
Right.
right?
Well, the
Yeah,
rigidity.
the rigidity of it, the rules based, like all of this, public shaming, all of the ways in which, society, the legislature, the Supreme Court, like all of this stuff that's just narrowing more and more and more what's acceptable, right? When it comes to sexuality and how hurtful that is to all of us in our
Yeah.
relationships and in the choices that we have or don't have to make.
Yes, yes. That isn't really governed by our physical needs.
Right.
It's more governed by a human moral view,
Right.
which has shifted a billion times over.
Exactly. And hopefully we'll continue to shift maybe in a better direction. But yeah, it's shifted,
Yeah.
it's shifted a billion times. And so
Yeah.
it's very, very challenging to have to, especially if you're single, right now and
y-
in the dating world and you're in midlife. Wow. That's a really, really, I've been there, was there for like 15 years. That's a really, really hard space to be in. So many challenges around.
For sure. I mean, I can't even I was almost there. My
Yeah.
husband was almost there. I have a few friends that are there, and then I have a friend. So here's another one I just wanna bring to the table, but dementia has been a big thing right now, right? And it's we always knew that dementia was a thing, but recently, a lot of the baby boomers are experiencing in relationships dementia. And more and more, you've got, I don't know the majority between men and women having dementia, but you're in couple relationships, marriages that have been there forever, who probably still need some sexual connection. I'm 51 and I'm still here doing my thing. So I don't know if there ever comes a time where it's like, nah, we're not doing that anymore, but we still are together. But when it's a space like that where I've heard some women say it's like, "I'm married, but I'm not married," and they don't know what
Challenging.
to do because it's not necessarily that they don't love the person anymore, but there's definitely no emotional connection, and that's
Yeah.
not even by choice,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Then you add on that maybe there's still the need for sexual connection. What do you say to that type of
Yeah.
space?
I mean, again, I don't have any moral judgment. I don't judge anybody around the choices that they make. I actually have had couples in that situation. I had a very, very dear family member whose husband had dementia, and she finally ended up dating this man while her husband was in the nursing home. And the family was very supportive of it because,
That's lovely.
yeah, because when you have a partner who's losing their memory and then losing other faculties, they are no longer there, right?
Mhm.
They don't understand what's going on. My mom had dementia. They don't understand who you are and what's happening. And it's so heartbreaking for the spouse and the kids, right? But especially for the spouse, so, so heartbreaking for them.
Yeah.
And, I think we all, I that I've said this to my partner, like, if that ever happens to me and yeah, like, do not just sit there and wait on me hand and foot. Like, go live your life. I don't want anybody to do that to me. It's like I don't want anybody to have to do that with me, but especially not him. Right. Like I want you to like, if I'm a shell in a nursing home, like just don't stop your life for me. That's me. Right.
See, but I
Um,
think that's a conversation that is even worth having right now
yeah, of
of
course it
like,
is.
"Hey, if I really can't even remember your face, I know you will love me no matter what, but I want you to be happy." Oh, I'm gonna have that conversation for sure because I think about that when I hear women around me who
Yeah.
they don't know what to do because morally they feel like, "Oh, I
I'm
can't," but
and I'm still married, but here I am. I'm needing somebody to emotionally connect with. I need touch.
yes.
I need connection, and I can't get it from, my partner. It's a challenging place to be, but it's an important. Yeah, I guess as we age, way past midlife, right? It's an important conversation to be having as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, so here's our plan. ladies who's listening, is I want to be able to continue our conversation, but more gear it around different arenas. Like one of the things we didn't even touch on that I'm so fascinated is women in power.
Mm,
Women in power and sex. That's a big
mhm.
thing, right?
Huge. Mhm,
Oh my gosh, more than what we are actually seeing and talking about. It's more in our culture than we imagine it to be.
absolutely.
And I think cultural upbringing and sex is another big subject because we live in a country that is a hotbed of different cultural differences. So many of us who are not even first generation are trying to fight back within ourselves of the things that we were told to be and do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's another great big conversation to be having. And adult children. And, the other day I was thinking, none of our kids have ever walked in on us, but what would that be like now? Like, would it be as terrible or spaces where my husband and I are empty nesters and
Mhm,
I want the freedom to walk around naked in my
mhm.
house,
Yeah, for sure.
which is
That's the
another.
great things about being an empty nester. It's like you have freedom.
Yeah, things like that. I think that those are conversations that were, like you said, singlehood. You
Mhm.
know, I almost want to tell my single friends, if you wanna sleep with him on the first date, you should. You shouldn't have I mean, but then there's just so many things to talk about in that way that
Yeah.
we need to normalize these conversations because repressing it, I think, is what makes us miserable. Is that
Mhm.
what your experience has been with the
Yeah.
people you work with?
Yeah. I mean, we do repress a lot of this because of shame and because of societal conditioning that we have, right? And
Yeah,
so we just, we hold back our feelings. We judge ourselves, constantly. How are my friends? What are my friends going to think if I, go out with this person and sleep with them on the first date, or whatever it is, right? What are my kids going to think if I bring this guy home?
yes,
Right? Like there's
yeah,
all of these ways in which we're constantly judging ourselves, and that's all societal conditioning, for
yeah,
us as well. And yes, and so we either repress them or we just make ourselves crazy and,
yes, yeah, there's
ques-
that piece too.
question ourselves constantly.
Yeah. Or even like, the thing that I don't have a personal experience in, but some of my dearest, closest friends have sexual trauma from a young age.
Yeah, that's
And
all
I
another
feel like
piece.
that plays in a huge part of
Huge.
the intimacy in marriage.
Absolutely, yeah, but women with I'm a trauma practitioner, women who have experienced and men, but, women who have experienced
Mhm.
sexual abuse and trauma, that has a huge impact on their sex life, huge impact on their sex life.
But they're gauging it. What I feel and have seen in these experiences is they're gauging love as that, right? Is, well, if I just keep giving it to them, but they're unhappy and it has nothing to do with, just from my view, like, I don't think it's a sex thing, I think it's a you thing, but at the same time, that's not something they wanna talk about or
Right,
even
right.
come near, or that kind of space. And I think that's what a lot of what my dad suffered with. I
Mm,
think my dad was a victim to a
mhm,
lot of that type of abuse as a young person. And culturally, God, for never, he would have never admitted to it or breathed it or any of that. Right.
mm,
And I think that that's why his serial cheating was on a very high level. Is
mhm,
now that he's gone and I talk to his siblings,
yeah,
I'm realizing more and more that it was his pain of his burden that he carried that he never shared and never talked about. And no wonder why he was so strict with me about
mm,
boys only want one thing. And I
mhm,
was
mhm,
like, wait, we just want to go to the playground. How is that turned into a sex talk?
right.
Eh,
When you're 6 years old.
Yeah, it didn't make
Right,
any sense to
right,
me. And
right.
then, my relationship with my husband, then marrying my mother, I'm telling you, that blew me out of the water. Like they're
But I mean, that's super common. Like we do marry our parents, right? And it makes sense because that's the intimate relationship that we grew up with. Like I married my mother, my first marriage as well, right? And every other partner I've had has a little bit of her in it too, right? But that's the intimate relationship that I saw. That was, and I didn't have a
Mhm.
father. My dad died when I was super young. She never remarried. She never dated. So I didn't even see what a healthy male
Oh,
relation looks like. I
wow.
had no barometer whatsoever.
Wow.
Right. I think
Yeah.
I learned that love was about grief because she grieved for her husband my entire childhood. And so, I fell in love with somebody who was grieving for somebody as well. Right. And
Oh,
that was the
wow.
message that I
Yeah.
learned. And
See, if you just dig enough in a safe space with a safe person, you
yeah,
will
find out
ultimately uncover what that is. That's
exactly.
fascinating. See, the more conversations that we could be having. I just thank you so much for bringing your truth and your honesty to the show today and helping us see how much deeper this sex talk is. It's not just a physical act. So let me ask you a question that I ask all my guests here as we're nearing the end of our conversation. If you were to walk down the street and you go into a cafe and you see 25-year-old you, what would you say to her that she would actually listen?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I don't know if she would listen to it, but I would tell her to trust her body, to
Mm.
listen to her body, to get curious about what her body is telling her, and then to trust it.
Well, that's a good one. That's a really good one because I think that's any advice you've been given is never really connected to the thing that you are in all the time. And the first thing we learn really early on is how to disconnect to it
Totally,
emotionally.
totally, and
So
physically as well.
yeah,
Mhm,
yes. When I started working through my healing, the first places I felt it was all over my body. I was
mhm,
like, what is happening, right?
right,
Things that I only felt when I was under certain influences.
right.
And, I've always heard that your body can chemically make up a bunch of the things that you can get as a substance replacer, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. And then
Sex
when
is
I
the
was
great let's think
feeling
about it. Orgasm is the greatest dopamine hit in the world.
it's
It's
huge.
like right? Like crack
Yeah.
cocaine. I mean, it essentially is just a dopamine rush
Yes. And I think that that's yes. And our bodies are constantly telling us
talking
things
to
that we're
us.
not really listening to.
I know, and then it talks to us louder and louder and louder and louder until we finally get the message, which usually has to do with an injury or an illness or a dis-ease, right?
Mm, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, even more conversations because that is true. I mean, I remember one time this older lady was telling me, she said, if you ever find your body being creaky, it's because you're not lubricated enough in the body. And you know how you fix that? Not any more water, more sex. And I was like, okay. She goes, sex is the best joint lubrication ever. And I was like, okay, I didn't know how to respond. I grew up Catholic, restricted conversation, and I was in my 20s, and she was just saying it so openly.
I
And
love
I've
that.
kept that in my mind ever since, though. She was like, if you find your body getting achy and creaky, go have sex.
I love that. I so love that.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being here and be on the lookout for our future conversations about more sex talk. And every single thing that we've talked about today is in your blogs. And where else can we find your great wisdom?
So, what I would suggest that you start with is if you go to this website, how to improve my love life.com, you will be able to receive 20 minutes to better sex, which are 7 3-minute short little videos with very, very specific, great tips on how to have better sex and understanding the differences between women's arousal and men's arousal. It's a great thing to watch with your partner as well. And that will get you into my system. I write emails every day, blog newsletters come out once a week. I'm on Instagram. That'll all be in the show notes as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. And I just want to say thank you for the audience that believes in the conversations that we're having and tunes in every single week and again shares with their friends, family, anybody who they believe can gain value from these conversations. We appreciate you so much. And as we end this show, I just want to say I have a different view of how we can be better humans out in the world through this very natural human need called sex.
Love
This is
it.
how I mean, if people want to heal the world, we got to heal all parts of us. And this is one of
100%.
the main portion. Our body craves it,
Absolutely.
craves it. So,
Absolutely.
thank you so much. Thank you again. We'll
Thank you.
keep
Wonderful.
you all keep your eyes open for more emails coming up for the series that we're going to get into in the future. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for being with me on today's journey. If you felt something resonate, if you saw yourself in this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe. Share it with a friend who needs this space and leave a review. It helps others find us, and it's a small way you can be a part of this powerful movement. Ladies, this isn't just a podcast. It's a community, a revolution, a place where midlife women come together to embrace our hard-earned wisdom and vibrant truth. So thank you for being part of this. Remember, it's time. It's time to step into our truth. No more holding back. Midlife is ours to own, and it's only getting started. So, until next time, take a breath, honor your journey, and live with audacity, courage, and joy. This is our time, our truth, unraveled, revealed, and celebrated.